The situation across the Middle East is shifting rapidly tonight, with multiple fronts active at once and competing narratives emerging from world leaders about where this conflict is heading next. At the center of it all is a claim from former U.S. President Donald Trump, who says Iran's leadership is now seeking a deal, even as military activity continues to intensify across the region. Trump stated that Iran's leaders are, in his words, begging to make a deal, but added uncertainty about whether the United States would be willing to engage. That statement stands in contrast to the current pace of military operations, which shows little sign of immediate de-escalation. It also raises questions about whether diplomatic channels are quietly active behind the scenes or whether this is a political framing of events rather than a confirmed shift in negotiations. At the same time, Israeli and U.S. aligned military actions inside Iran appear to be ongoing. Reports from U.S. and Israeli sources claim that an Israeli airstrike has killed Alireza Tangziri, a senior commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy. However, it is important to note that Iranian authorities have not confirmed this claim. That lack of confirmation leaves open the possibility that the information is either unverified or part of a broader information battle accompanying the military campaign. What is clear, however, is that strikes on Iranian territory are continuing, and they are being met with retaliatory action. Iranian missiles have been launched towards central and northern Israel, triggering air defense responses and expanding the scope of the confrontation beyond a single front. This back-and-forth dynamic, strike followed by counterstrike, is increasingly defining the rhythm of the conflict. But the escalation is not confined to Israel and Iran alone. The regional dimension is becoming more pronounced by the hour. Several Gulf states, including Bahrain, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia, have activated their air defense systems to intercept Iranian missiles and drones. These interceptions suggest that projectiles are either crossing into or threatening their airspace, effectively widening the conflict zone. In the United Arab Emirates, at least 2 people have been reported killed and several others injured as a result of falling debris linked to these aerial engagements. That detail is significant because it illustrates how even countries not directly engaged in offensive operations are now experiencing the physical consequences of the conflict. The risks are no longer contained. They are dispersing across the region. Meanwhile, Israel is expanding its military operations beyond Iran. In Lebanon, Israeli forces are intensifying strikes, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stating that Israel is establishing or expanding what he describes as a buffer zone in southern Lebanon. This move suggests a broader strategic objective, not only to respond to immediate threats but also to reshape the security landscape along Israel's northern border. The expansion into Lebanon introduces another layer of complexity. It raises the possibility of deeper involvement from groups aligned with Iran, particularly Hezbollah, which has historically operated in southern Lebanon and maintains close ties with Tehran. While the current reports focus on Israeli strikes and territorial intentions, the underlying implication is that multiple theaters of conflict could become more tightly interconnected. At the same time, satellite imagery from the region shows smoke plumes rising near Kuwait International Airport, indicating that the impact of the conflict is being felt even in areas not traditionally considered active combat zones. These visual indicators reinforce the idea that the conflict is spreading geographically, not necessarily through direct occupation, but through the reach of missiles, drones, and defensive countermeasures. Taken together, these developments point to a multi-layered conflict that is evolving in real time. There is the direct military confrontation between Israel and Iran, the expanding Israeli operations in Lebanon, the defensive responses of Gulf states, and the broader geopolitical messaging coming from Washington. The statement from Trump about Iran seeking a deal adds a diplomatic dimension to the situation, but it remains unclear how that aligns with official U.S. policy or with the actions currently being carried out on the ground. It is possible that such statements are intended to frame the conflict in terms of leverage, suggesting that continued military pressure is forcing Iran toward negotiations. However, without confirmation from Iranian officials or from current U.S. leadership, that interpretation remains speculative. What is not speculative is the pattern of escalation. Each new development, whether it is a reported targeted strike, a missile launch, or an expansion of operations into a new area, increases the likelihood of miscalculation. In a region where multiple actors are operating simultaneously, the margin for error becomes extremely narrow. There is also the question of strategic intent. Israel's actions suggest a focus on both immediate threat reduction and longer-term deterrence. By targeting figures within Iran's military structure and expanding operations into Lebanon, Israel appears to be signaling that it is willing to act across multiple fronts to address what it perceives as interconnected threats. For Iran, the missile launches toward Israel and the broader regional footprint of its response indicate a willingness to project power beyond its borders, even under sustained pressure. The involvement, direct or indirect, of neighboring states through defensive actions further complicates Iran's strategic calculations. From a global perspective, the implications are significant. The Middle East remains a critical hub for energy markets, trade routes, and geopolitical alliances. Any sustained escalation has the potential to disrupt these systems, drawing in external powers either diplomatically or, in some cases, militarily. There's also the informational dimension to consider. Competing claims about battlefield outcomes, such as the reported killing of a senior IRGC commander, highlight how narratives are being shaped alongside physical events. In modern conflicts, perception can be almost as important as reality, influencing both domestic support and international reactions. As this situation continues to unfold, the key variables to watch will be whether the pace of military operations slows, whether any form of communication between adversaries becomes visible, and whether additional actors are drawn more directly into the conflict. For now, the trajectory appears to be one of continued tension rather than immediate resolution. The combination of active military engagements, expanding geographic scope, and uncertain diplomatic signals suggests that the region is entering a phase where stability is increasingly difficult to maintain. And while statements about potential negotiations may hint at an off-ramp, the reality on the ground tells a different story, one defined by ongoing strikes, defensive mobilizations, and a widening circle of impact that now reaches well beyond the initial points of confrontation.